So I was walking into Panera one day, and I noticed that the line was really long. And ordinarily, this would be something that would kind of bum me out, because I'm the kind of guy that wants my food like this, guys. Like, I'm that kind of dude. But on this day, for some reason, I was kind of pleasantly surprised by the long line, because I was kind of debating on two different dishes that I really wanted at Panera Bread. I was debating between getting the chicken tortellini Alfredo or the tomato soup bread bowl. Okay, these are two fantastic dishes I highly recommend. But anyways, I was sitting in this line, and I was pleasantly surprised because it gave me a time to kind of step back and think about what I really wanted. And as the line got shorter and shorter, I got closer and closer to the cashier, and I found myself a lot more confused than when I started. I didn't really know what to do. So when I got to the cashier, she finally said, "What can I get for you today?" And I just went for it. I just said, "Chicken tortellini Alfredo." I was all good, my order was in, now all I had to do was wait. But then she asked me another question. She asked me, "Can I get a name for the order?" And I froze. And I said, "Gautham." Now my mother's in the audience, and she knows that my name isn't pronounced that way. It's my name, and I sure as heck know it's not pronounced that way, yet I found myself sitting in Panera, confused. It's like that moment that you're in class, and the teacher calls on you, and you think you might have the right answer, but as soon as the words come out of your mouth, you know that it's just wrong. So why did I do this? Well, I mean, I guess it goes back to my childhood. Now, I know what you're thinking. At 7 years old, I had a killer jawline. And if you want to talk to me about it, you can talk to me after the event. But I was your average, everyday, run-of-the-mill kid who had dreams and aspirations of becoming an astronaut, a doctor, a movie director, whatever ambitious dream I had going on in my head at the time. And while I don't remember specifically how I used to introduce myself to others, I do remember how people used to call me. "Gautham, come play football with us." "Gautham, what did you get on number 4 on that exam?" "Gautham, we get it. You like Ariana Grande. Stop blasting music in the shower. I'm trying to sleep." Fun fact, that was my RA from last year. My family friends, they would notice how my friends used to call me. They would say, "Well, you know your name isn't pronounced that way, right? Why do people call you that?" And I would respond in a couple of different ways. I would say, "I don't know. I don't care," or "It's easier that way." I just wanted to be a normal kid with normal kid dreams and a normal kid name. And in my mind, a normal kid name wasn't something that you had to second guess. It wasn't something that you had to actively think about. It was just a name, and I wanted to be normal. So by the time high school rolled around, ignore the acne, by the time high school rolled around, I decided to start to introduce myself as Gautham. It was an identity I was okay with projecting. People had been calling me it for years, and I was okay with that. There were even a couple of perks to having the name too. And if I had a nickel for every time I've had a conversation like this, I'd be a rich, rich man. Somebody would ask me, "Your name is Gautham?" I'd say, "Yeah." "Like the city?" And I'd think about it for a second, and I'd be like, "Yeah." "That's so cool, dude. You must be a huge Batman fan, huh?" And while it was cool to be the Batman kid for 4 years of high school, the problem resided in when people would ask me where my name came from. Now, did people ask me whether or not my parents were just huge Batman fans? Yes. Did I confirm their suspicion? Absolutely not. But I didn't know the answer to their question. So whenever people would ask me where your name came from, I would just say, "I'm not sure." And it pained me to say that because I had a lot of friends who prided themselves on where their name came from. My friend Daisy, she told me that she was named after her mother's favorite flower. My friend Jackson, he said that he was named after his grandfather's beloved dog. But where does that leave me? Empty and uncertainty. So by the time college rolled around, I realized that this whole Gautham facade would have to fade out. And while I realized that college would be a great opportunity for me to project myself as a new person, I didn't know how easy it would be to just revert back to the way I used to introduce myself. Because while I wasn't okay with how I introduced myself, it was comfortable. And I wasn't really ready to give that up yet. But what I found is college is a completely different beast from high school. You have people who are coming from all over the world with different cultural backgrounds and experiences to share. And because of that, people ask a lot of questions about who you are. I remember I had a conversation with someone on move-in day, freshman year, and she said, "So your name's Gautham?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, why do you pronounce it that way?" And I tried to act dumb. I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "Well, I mean, I have a friend back home, and he pronounces it in a different way, so I was just wondering why you pronounce it the way that you do." And while I know that she didn't mean it, I felt like I was under attack. Because the only identifier, the only marker I had to project to a sea of people that I didn't even know on college move-in day was immediately stripped away from me. And I felt like I was empty, and I had nothing. And it didn't really get better as college ensued. I remember applying for a position, an academic position at Case, and I walked into the room where I was being interviewed, and the interviewer was sitting at his desk, and he had my resume in his hand, and he was looking down, and he looked up at me, and he said, "Remind me how to pronounce your name again? I don't really remember." And I said, "Well, everybody calls me Gautham." And I think he realized that while I didn't know how to do it, he knew that it was a cry for help because I didn't know what to do. So he responded by saying, "Well, what would you like me to call you?" And I just said, "Well, you can call me whatever you like." You see, I strive myself on being a people pleaser. When people called me Gautham, it was a cool name, and they enjoyed calling me that, and in turn, it put a smile on my face. But what I didn't realize is how I prioritized that feeling over how I felt about myself. And it was at that point that I realized that there was a large disconnect between my social identity and my intrinsic identity. How I projected myself to others versus how I felt about myself. And it begged the question, at what point do I sacrifice aspects of my social identity in order to maintain the security of my intrinsic one? I didn't know the answer to that question, and that's what scared me the most. I would do whatever I could for the satisfaction of my peers just to create a false sense of security for myself, and I knew that wouldn't let up for much longer. So it was at that point that I decided to make a shift. No matter what my peers, teachers, and classmates thought, it was time for me to reclaim and renew this new sense of self and identity that I've been longing for ever since I was that kid who had dreams of being an astronaut. My name is Gautham, derived from Siddhartha Gautama, also known as Buddha, which means remover of darkness. And I can say with absolute certainty that I do not identify anymore with any other name. And ever since I started introducing myself in this way, sure, I would get a couple of head turns. Sure, people would ask me to repeat myself, but those occurrences are no match for the renewed sense of confidence and security I feel within myself. And while my story is extremely anecdotal, that doesn't mean that things like this don't happen anywhere else, especially here on Case campus. Dahlia, she's a second-year student at Case Western Reserve University, studying political science and history from Cleveland, Ohio. She goes by Dahlia, but people end up calling her Dahlia. Ambika, she's a first-year student at Case studying chemical biology and cognitive science from Chicago, Illinois. Her name is pronounced Ambika, and she would like to be called Ambika, but people end up calling her Ambika or Ambika. Case is an institution teeming with diversity, filled with crazy names with crazy stories. And if there's one thing that I want you to get from my talk, it's this. Your name means something. Not only is it a series of words that marks you on, series of letters that marks you on this globe, but it defines who you were, are, and will become. It'll be associated with your achievements, your setbacks, your goals, and the characteristics that make you, you. So show others how much your name means to you by wearing it with confidence. Thank you.